يا الله يا الله يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the Bridge to Faith show.
Welcome to this week's episode of Bridge to Faith, and we're here just on the edge of Wales in England.
يا الله يا رحمن
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah. You are watching Guidance TV, and we're continuing our program, Bridge to Faith. And one of the things that we've been discussing, especially with relation to the holidays coming up, is the impact that it has on our children when we tell them fairy stories and insist that that's a part of our belief, that that's something that should be a part and parcel of us going to paradise.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I was speaking about, my own background, my own history, and things that happened in my childhood, it really affected me a lot when I learned that there's no Easter bunny that lays colored eggs. There's no Santa Claus that's going to go down a chimney. There's no reindeer that are going to fly.
I'm joking.
And then I found that you, John, also had the same experience, and it was traumatic. And what we want to talk about is not that we're trying to put down people's holidays and celebrations. We don't want to stop people from having fun, coming together with their families, enjoying the meal. What we want to do is make sure we understand the impact that it has on a child when a parent, a teacher, a preacher, a close relative, and others join together almost to present something that's a blatant lie that the child is brought up to believe is real for years, and then suddenly the impact that it has.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about what is the impact of bringing pretty things into your home and decorating, this is another subject. But when we try to tie in with ancient religions and what their superstitions were, and then bring that in as though it was true, what I'm saying is I think that that is something very dangerous, and it gets away from our real principle of taking the basis of faith, which is based on beliefs. Beliefs have to be based on truth, or at least something that you could either prove or not disprove. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
And if I could, John, I'd like for you to speak just for a minute on this topic yourself.
Yeah, I mean, generally we have different festivals, you know, Muslims, Christians, Jews, non-Muslims, non-believers. Everyone has different festivals which they celebrate. And Christmas is a time that Christians, you know, they have a celebration. And generally it's a great time for family and friends to come together, you know, exchange gifts, bring the family together. They might attend church and things like that.
Let's don't forget the food.
Don't forget the food.
Yes.
You need to have the turkey.
Oh.
You know, I mean, growing up, Christmas, growing up, we was all year round, we'll be waiting for Christmas. You know, we can't wait for Christmas. And from a very young age, you know, in England, we brought up to believe in Father Christmas. I know in America it's Santa Claus.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and this was a belief. This was something that I was told from a very young age, that there was a man called Father Christmas, and just before Christmas we'd actually go and visit him. When my parents took me to see Father Christmas for the first time, we was queuing around the grotto, and there was
lining up.
Yeah, it was lining up for to go and visit Father Christmas, and there was a huge train set circling the grotto.
What is grotto?
Like his house. You know, you know, a make-believe house, not the real one.
Santa's place.
Not the real one. So, as I was queuing, you know, I fell in love with this train set, and my mum said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want a train set." And I'm pointing at this huge train set, you know. So I went in, sat on his knee, and you know, he's a total stranger. We don't know who he is. You know, I'm sure he's a nice guy. Sat on his knee and he said, "What's your name?" I said, "John." And he said, "What would you like for Christmas?" And I said, "A train set." And he said, "Well, we'll get a train set for you." And then he goes to the side of his bag and he gives me a gift. About this big.
That's nice.
Yeah? Anyway, when I got outside, I ripped it open.
And what did you expect to see?
I was expecting a huge train set.
In the little
The same
box?
one going around his grotto in this small box. I was a kid.
Well, Santa could do anything, right?
If he can go down chimneys and fly
I
with...
suppose.
We'll come to that later.
All right.
When I opened it, it was a teapot. And...
Teapot?
A teapot.
Like a cup of tea.
Yeah, like a small tea set. It had a teapot and a few cups. And I'm looking at this tea set, and my mum and dad said I just burst into tears and I'm throwing a tantrum in the middle of the shopping centre. And I knew something wasn't right. And so I was expecting a train set. This is just one of the first stories, but it's funny when you look back at it. But from a very young age, we're told by the most trustworthy people in our lives, our own parents, that there's this man called Father Christmas. He spends all year making presents for children around the world, which later you realise, what descriptions do you have of him in America?
Well, it's strange that you mentioned train set because I also had the same thing, that I wanted a train set. And I wanted it so bad, and I got a train set, by the way. Wasn't the one I wanted exactly, but it would do fine. It was a wind-up. You could wind it up, put it on the tracks, and away it would go around. And it was really cute, and I really was excited. The following year, though, we moved from the north of the United States, where the snow and Christmas trees are naturally there. We moved to Houston, Texas, where the winter time you could go down to Galveston and go swimming because it's not that cold, you know. In fact, we did do that. But anyway, here we are. We were in a travel trailer because we were relocating. And it came time for Christmas. And I panicked. I went to my mother. Mom, Santa can't come. Why? We don't have a chimney. She said, he can come down that little pipe there. And the pipe is right over the stove. And I looked at that pipe, was about that big around. I said, are you sure? Yeah, he can come down that. Okay. So that night we were going to lay down and get to rest and wait for Christmas. We had a tiny little tree. And then I realized, oh my God, we've got the stove on to keep warm. The fire will be there. You'll burn him up. Mom, you have to turn off the stove. You have to turn it off. Why? Because Santa will get burned. Oh, no, he won't get burned. And I'm thinking, I know the one who doesn't get burned by fire, than the hellfire. And he wears red too, and I'm getting really confused. But anyway, we got our gifts the next day, but the thing that happened the following year was at school, I heard from some of the other kids, they were making fun of me. And they said, well, there's no Santa. Now listen, don't talk like this. Because from my father, my mother, my aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relatives, and my preacher, my teacher, everybody I had known all my life had always supported the fact that although you don't see him, he's there. Although you don't know, he knows everything. He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good for goodness sake. That's the song. And how in the world are you going to tell me you don't believe?
Yeah.
And so I go running
Sleigh
home.
bells here, are they ringing?
I went home to my mom.
Yeah.
And she's standing there washing dishes. And I go running in and I said, Mom! And she said, what's the matter now? I said, Mom, the kids at school, they said there's no Santa Claus. She didn't even look up at me. She just kept watching. She said, don't tell your sisters. was shocked. I was mortified. And then if Star Wars had been out at that time, which came 50 years later, but had Star Wars been out at that time, I would have said, my mom's gone over to the dark side. You know, because this is not...
She's one of them.
I wanted to call long distance, all the way back to my grandmother, and hear her reassuring voice tell me, your mom's wrong, there's a Santa Claus, you're okay, she's just become a disbeliever, you know. This is what I imagined. Then I laid down that night, and I thought, it can't be. My dad's here, and you know what? I jumped out of bed. I went into the living room to the couch, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I just want to lay here for a minute." They said, "Well, you should go to bed." I said, "Oh, I will." And then I pretended I fell asleep, turned my face over to the back of the couch, and listened. And I heard my mom or dad one was saying, "Well, I think he's asleep anyway. Yeah, let's get the stuff in and get this over with." That couldn't have been. And together, I realized they're both now disbelievers. They started bringing stuff out of another room of the house and putting everything around the tree, even a bicycle that I wanted so bad. And the next morning when I woke up, the whole idea was for my parents, they're winking, saying, you know, just go along with everything. And it felt like this is really bad. And then later, don't tell your sisters, they're not old enough yet. Now, do you folks here in jolly old England have anything to do with a rabbit in the spring of the year that comes up with colored eggs?
Around Easter time. Easter time, we have, I mean, before we were talking about Christmas time, when we had the story of Father Christmas and the sleigh, Rudolph. You know, you leave the glass of wine, the mince pie. And the
glass of milk and cookies in the States.
In England, it's a glass of the finest red, as they say.
The squeezing of the grapes.
This is what they say. They have a mince pie and a carrot. And when you come down in the morning, the carrot's half gone. You know, Rudolph has had a bite. The mince pie, you know, sometimes it's gone, sometimes there's a bite out missing. But without a doubt, every time the wine is gone.
The grape juice is gone.
The grape juice.
All right.
So this enforces your belief as a child, you know, in Christmas. So another belief which we had, I mean, I never actually personally believed in this. This was something that I knew was not real from day one, but a common one which many people are told is the Easter Bunny. And as you said, around the time of Easter, the Easter Bunny would come and lay eggs, chocolate eggs.
You guys had chocolate eggs?
Chocolate eggs. I mean, what eggs did you have?
Well, they're colored eggs.
Okay.
And when you crack them open, you have a hard-boiled egg inside.
You know what actually amazed me is all these stories as a kid, believing in them, you know, such as Father Christmas. And none of my, you know, at school we had a few Muslim friends. There was a few, there was a Pakistani friend of mine, and he never got any presents. So I was always wondered why Father Christmas didn't give him any presents.
What did it make you think?
Well, it's just confusing. I mean, you're thinking, is it racism? What is it?
Did the Pakistani children or the Muslim children, did they seem to be bothered by the fact they didn't receive it?
No.
Not bothered at all?
Not at all. But they never went to see him when they came to the school.
But of course now we understand why.
Yeah, now I do, yeah. But another aspect of this is the material side of it. What we're seeing now with this extreme materialism, this competition, especially with the kids at school, you know, they're competing for the best toys, the best games, the best trainers, whatever it may be. And in the school, the kids, you know, have a lot of bullying, and, you know, families what are less fortunate than other families, you know, it's very difficult. And it's Christmas becomes such a stress on the family and the children. And is it fun? Is it worth it?
You know, about a decade ago or so, maybe a little bit more, there was an article that came out telling us that the number one day out of the year for suicide was the day after Christmas. I think that, to be fair, I'm not telling people, and I don't think it would be fair to me to say, you know, don't have any fun. What I'm saying is, how about just have fun, but let's hold back on these stories unless we make sure they understand, oh, this is just a fun story. Wouldn't it be funny if, something like that, and maybe the children would be able to deal with it better. Now, as far as Muslims are concerned, this is a whole separate subject, and now we're talking about a particular faith. Up to now, we've been just talking in general. This kind of thing can affect the way children grow up, and you're looking at building a very strong case against belief at all, because you have let them down again and again and again. Now you want to come and say there's a God, and they'd be like, no, why should I believe you now? Well, you know, you cried wolf how many times, and now you're telling me this story? Keep it. And now they're at an age where they're much older and looking around and hearing other things and opportunities to go far away from following the basic tenets of faith coming from the Abrahamic faith. Now we're talking now about Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of them attributing the creation to one God. All of them saying the worship of one God, talking about Adam being created from the dirt and his wife created from his side. All three faiths have these things in common. And then the story of Adam and Eve in the paradise, the devil tempting them, etc. After that, again, all three faiths they have that they had children. Then the two boys had a problem, one killing the other. After that, tribes and nations coming from it. And again, there's no argument here. These comprise over half the world's population today. And they're saying the same essence, that here is a chance for you to know something about God, although they'll each have a little different perception there. But the main thing is the Ten Commandments. But again, I want to come to, okay, here's a problem that we all have together, and that is our children growing up without faith. To elaborate on that for just a minute, I'd like to mention something we as Muslims understand, like to share that with everybody. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he taught us that each child is born already in the perfect condition with Almighty God. A child who dies, he says, is going to go right to paradise. So, yeah, babies, according to Islam, are pure, they're innocent. But then he, peace be upon him, the Prophet Muhammad, he said, the parents are the ones responsible for how they're going to turn out, whether they become a Jew, a Christian, or a fire worshiper. You've got something to teach the children, and it's very much about how we treat each other.
Well, that's it for this episode of Bridge to Faith, but stay tuned for more programs here. And by the way, a big thank you goes out to our brother John, who helped us with our program today, here on the corner of Wales in England and the big bridge that you see here. MashaAllah. It's nice, isn't it? Until next time, for Bridge to Faith and Guidance TV, Yusuf Estes bidding you peace. Assalamu alaikum.
خالق أنت البارئ المصور يا غفار يا قهار سبحان